The dust tasted like regret. Silas crept along the ridge, squinting against the afternoon sun that hammered down on Copper Canyon. Below, the town shimmered in the heat, a cluster of sun-baked buildings and bustling activity he's been avoiding for 3 weeks. 3 weeks since he's been branded an outlaw. He wasn't an outlaw. Not really. He's just been caught in the crossfire between the Caldwell family and the Crimson Hen gang, a dispute over water rights and a silver load. He's only been trying to keep the peace, as the town's newly appointed deputy. But when a stray bullet, meant for Caldwell, found its way into the town's banker, old Mr. Hemlock, Silas was the closest one to the deceased. Automatic assumption. Unfair judgment. He tightened the strap of his rifle. He needed to reach Elias Thorne. The old prospector, a recluse living up in the Black Ridge Mountains, might be his only hope. Elias was rumored to be a man of wisdom, a man who could read the land and understand the intricacies of Copper Canyon's complicated history. Maybe he could clear his name. Silas descended the ridge, keeping to the sparse cover of scrub brush. He knew the terrain like the back of his hand, every gully, every dry wash. The desert wasn't kind, but it was honest. It didn't judge. He reached the outskirts of town and paused, observing the scene. Sheriff Brody, a man built like an oak tree and just as stubborn, was overseeing the construction of a makeshift jail expansion. Caldwell's men, led by the sneering, thin-faced Jed, were volunteering their labor, clearly under Caldwell's direction. The Crimson Hen, disguised as itinerant laborers, watched from the shadows, their eyes glinting with a quiet menace. Copper Canyon was a tinderbox, and Silas was the spark. He saw her then. Maria. She worked at the general store, her dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, her movements efficient and graceful. He's always admired her quiet strength, her unwavering kindness. He's also known she was Caldwell's daughter, a difficult connection to navigate, especially now. He took a deep breath and walked towards the store, ignoring the stares and whispered comments that followed him. Maria looked up as he approached, her expression unreadable. "Silas," she said, her voice soft but firm, "you shouldn't be here." "I need your help," he said, keeping his voice low. "I need to talk to your father." Maria shook her head. "He won't listen. He's convinced you're guilty." "He's wrong," Silas insisted. "I didn't kill Hemlock." "It doesn't matter what's true," Maria said, her eyes filled with a sadness that mirrored his own. "The town has already made up its mind." "Then I need to leave," Silas said, turning to go. "I need to find someone who will listen." "Go see Elias Thorne," Maria said suddenly, surprising both of them. "He lives up in Black Ridge. He knows more about this town than anyone." Silas looked at her, hope flickering in his chest. "Why would you tell me that?" Maria didn't answer. She simply looked away, her expression veiled. Silas nodded, turning and heading towards the edge of town. He had a lead, however fragile. The journey to Black Ridge was grueling. The sun beat down relentlessly, and the terrain was unforgiving. But Silas pressed on, fueled by a desperate hope. He found Elias's cabin nestled in a hidden valley, smoke curling lazily from the chimney. Elias was a wizened old man with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of the ages. He listened patiently as Silas recounted his story, his expression unreadable. "Caldwell wants you gone," Elias said when Silas finished. "He sees you as a threat to his control of the water and the silver." "I know," Silas said. "But how do I prove my innocence?" Elias chuckled, a dry, rustling sound. "Innocence isn't proven, son. It's understood. You need to understand the history of this land, the unspoken agreements, the deep-seated grudges. Hemlock wasn't just a banger. He was a keeper of secrets." He led Silas to a hidden room, filled with old maps, journals, and faded photographs. "Hemlock was involved in a deal with the Crimson Hen decades ago," Elias explained. "A deal for the silver load. Caldwell's family discovered it, and Hemlock was supposed to keep it secret. But he was going to betray them and sell it to the Hand." "But why kill him?" Silas asked. "The Hand likely grew impatient," Elias said. "Or Caldwell found out about Hemlock's double-dealing and took matters into his own hands. The bullet that killed him was a custom load, a type only the Crimson Hand uses." Silas's mind raced. He now had a direction to pursue. "How do I prove this?" "Find the ledger," Elias said, his voice low. "Hemlock kept a ledger detailing the deal. It's hidden somewhere in his old office at the bank. If you find it, you're golden." Silas returned to Copper Canyon under the cloak of darkness. The town was eerily quiet, the usual bustle replaced by an unsettling stillness. He made his way to the bank, his heart pounding in his chest. The office was locked, but with a little effort he managed to pick the lock. The office was dusty and cluttered, but Silas quickly located the hidden compartment Elias had mentioned. Inside lay a leather-bound ledger. He quickly flipped through the pages, his eyes scanning the entries. There it was, the detailed account of Hemlock's agreement with the Crimson Hand. He was about to leave when he heard a noise behind him. He spun around, his hand instinctively reaching for his rifle. It was Jed Caldwell, his face contorted in a sneer. "So you found it," Jed said, his voice dripping with venom. "I was wondering where you'd gone." "I'm turning this over to Sheriff Brody," Silas said, clutching the ledger. "Brody is in Caldwell's pocket," Jed sneered. He gestured to a man who stepped forward, their hands on their guns. "I suggest you hand over that ledger, Silas. It's for your own good." A tense standoff ensued. Silas knew he was outnumbered, outgunned, but he also knew he couldn't let them take the ledger. It was his only chance to clear his name, to restore justice to Copper Canyon. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Maria. She stood between Silas and the Caldwell man, her face resolute. "Leave him alone, Jed," she said, her voice surprisingly strong. Jed laughed. "Stay out of this, Maria. This is men's business." "It's everyone's business," Maria retorted. "My father has poisoned this town for too long." Jed's face darkened. He hesitated, then barked an order. "Take him." As the Caldwell man lunged, a series of shots rang out. The Caldwell man fell, but not from Silas's rifle. They were struck by a sharpshooter hidden on the rooftop across the street. The shadow that fired the shots disappeared quickly. Silas stared at the scene in disbelief. Maria rushed to his side, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and concern. "Who was that?" Silas asked. Maria didn't answer. Instead, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. The next morning, Silas presented the ledger to Sheriff Brody, who, for the first time, seemed genuinely shocked. With the evidence irrefutable, Caldwell and his men were arrested. The Crimson Hand, exposed for their involvement, scattered into the desert. Copper Canyon began to heal. Silas, his name cleared, prepared to leave. He found Maria waiting for him at the edge of town. "Thank you," he said, handing her a small silver charm he's carried since he arrived in Copper Canyon. "For everything." Maria took the charm, her eyes meeting his. "Be careful, Silas," she said softly. "There are still shadows in this town." Silas nodded, mounting his horse. As he rode away, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was leaving something behind. A debt unpaid, a mystery unsolved, a woman's secret. He glanced back at Copper Canyon, its buildings shimmering under the desert sun. He knew he wouldn't forget it, or her. The wind carried a whisper across the plains, a single word barely audible of vengeance.